Hi, I'm Nicholas Seminario, founder of Dark Angel Company. This podcast is to share the untold stories of just a few of the many people battling mental illnesses in this world. If you're in need of a little inspiration to keep fighting or to feel less alone in your battle, keep listening and share to spread awareness. This is the Dark Angel Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dark Angel Podcast. It is your host, Nick, again. I have a very special episode for you guys today, and to help us continue on doing that, it really helps when you guys give us a 5-star review. Really helps us out and keeps us going. Today I have Belle Morrone here, and she's going to be sharing her story. She really has another amazing story for you guys, and I'm really excited for her to share it. If you want to introduce yourself, give us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how we know each other, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my name's Belle Morrone, and I went to Bethpage High School. So that's how I know Matt, Nick's brother. And we were in the same grade, same graduating class, same friend group, stuff like that. So I've known him for a while, even though he went to Kellenberg for a little bit. But I've known him for a while, and yeah, he just told me to come on here. So I was like, why not?
Yeah, so Matt came up to me and he was like, oh, my friend, she's interested in being on your podcast. Would you have her? I was like, yeah, of course. Tell her to reach out. And she did. And here we are. So I want you to get into your story. Tell us what you have, what you've struggled with. Start from the beginning and take us from there.
So I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety probably 9th grade. That's when I started therapy, but I've been struggling with visible signs of depression since 7th grade at least. It's been just a struggle, just sleeping all day, not showering, the typical symptoms kind of depression. It's a disease, so it is what it is. But I found out in 9th grade when I was diagnosed, my mom actually told me that my uncle, her brother, died by suicide. So that was I thought he had a terminal illness. I didn't think it was mental. But he was trapped in 9/11. So he had a lot of PTSD and a lot of demons that he was fighting. So I found that out. And that's when it hit me. I think 9th grade, it hit me. And I was like, wait, I might have that. Because I didn't know what depression was. I thought, oh, you fail a math test, you're depressed, for a day. I didn't know it was a long-term thing. So that's when it kind of hit me that I was like, oh, shit, this is bad.
Yeah, so you're in 9th grade and you're kind of just... 9th grade itself is a hard time, right? We're all going through changes. It's your teenage years. So now you're in 9th grade and you find out you have depression. Did you notice any of this stuff earlier? Did you notice something that caused it? Is this something that was just in your chemical makeup? What do you feel was kind of the root of this?
I don't really know. I point fingers to I was very hard on myself, especially with school. Any little thing, I had to do good in everything I did and just be perfect at everything, and it took a toll on me because it's a lot as a 9th grader to be worrying about studying for all these subjects. It's just it doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Hey guys, this next part of the podcast, Belle talks in depth about self-harm and the raw and true feelings of how she felt at the time when she was doing this. Self-harm is an extremely serious problem that many people are affected by. I chose to include this part for informational purposes for people who can't understand it, in hopes they can see the perspective of people going through it. It is never the answer, and if this is something you are dealing with right now, I urge you to text CONNECT to 741-741 for a free self-harm text line. If this is a topic that may be a trigger for you in any way, shape, or form, please skip ahead to 21 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, I started doing physical things like self-harm in 7th grade. I would literally just get so mad. It started where I would get just so mad. I would get into a fight with my mom, or I would get a bad grade on a test, and I would just be so angry. I would just bang my head on a wall. Like, I would just start doing that. And my mom was kind of like, well, why did you do that? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, it helped. And she was like, what? Like, she was so like confused because mental health wasn't really talked about then as much as it is now. So she was kind of like, why are you doing that? But it like escalated into other things, and that's when I like realized, I was like, this is not normal, like what I'm doing right now. Like, it's not normal. People don't do this. Normal people. But
Yeah, and exactly. Like you said, you kind of put quotations around it. It's not something you were really able to control, right? It was an impulse, and you kind of acted on it. And that's the other thing where, it was good. You kind of realize, you're like, okay, like I have to do something about this because this isn't good for me. It's not good for my mental health. So when you were going through that, was that the only things you did? Were there other things that, you kind of led into or started to do?
yeah, so this is like the trigger. Yeah, so I would start when I would get really angry. It was kind of weird. Like, I would be like, what's wrong with me right now? Because I wouldn't have control over my body at all. And I would get really mad, and I knew I couldn't hurt like anyone. I would never do something like that. And I would just go up to my room. I would either bang my head on a wall and just be having a full tantrum, or I started actually like, I would literally like punch my walls, like poke holes in my walls with like scissors and stuff like that. And then it escalated to like, what's the point in doing that? And that's when I started self-harming. Yeah, I started cutting myself in 7th grade, and it was a lot because I was deathly afraid of anyone seeing it, and like deathly afraid of my mom seeing it or my therapist finding out. Like, I was just embarrassed, I guess. Like, it was just like, people would be like, why do you do that to yourself? Like, they wouldn't understand unless they felt that way. But I was just so deep in a hole that it kept happening. And it's honestly addictive. Like, I did it for years, did it till last summer.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I did it from 7th grade till 12th grade. And it was just a lot. Like, my mom eventually found out. I eventually like went to a hospital to get like evaluated and stuff like that. And the woman, like, I've never been asked that question. The woman just looked at me, and she was evaluating me, and she was just like, so like, do you cut? Like, what do you use? And I was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I was like, I've never spoken about it to anyone. And I was like, what? And she was like, what do you use? Like, scissor, screwdriver, like, and I was like, what? And it was very triggering. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell? So I just started bawling my eyes out, and she just knew off the spot. And she was just like, yeah, so like, what do you use? Like, and she like knew. And I was like, wow, like, that was a lot. So she diagnosed me, confirmed the diagnosis of like, you're clinically depressed. That's like one of the main signs is self-harm. I've been told I have anxiety. I think my anxiety kind of was a little bit less severe as my depression. Now it's more, but I'm glad that it's more. Just because I hate feeling like hopeless. Like, when people say, like, when doctors, I don't know if a lot of people can relate, but like, when you're at like a hospital getting evaluated by like a psychiatrist to like be prescribed medication, they're kind of just like, I don't know, like, they're just like, do you feel hopeless? Scale of 1 to 10. And you're just like, hopeless. Like, what does that even mean? But it's very true. Like, you feel like there's nothing that will pull you out of that state. There's nothing that you can do to make your life better. Like, you sleep all day. It's like, it's fine. Like, there's nothing. Like, I haven't showered in 4 days. Who cares? Like, I'm not seeing anyone anyway. And it just gets to a point where you're just not functioning as a human being. Like, you're not brushing your teeth, you're not showering. And it's like normal things like that you're taught in kindergarten, is too much to do. And I've been in that place where it's just too much to even get out of bed and grab a glass of water, even get out of bed and go to the bathroom. Like, I would hold it until I had stomach pains. Like, it's just stuff like that, like, is when you realize, like, you need to either speak to someone or talk to, like, your mother or something and see where to go from there, because your parents know best. But at the same time, mental health wasn't discussed back then. So you're like, do they know what I'm talking about? Do they not know? But I just, like, I don't know. I just went therapy, different therapists, and I really like my therapist now. So
That's good. So, I mean, over those 4 years, right? Because you're in your first year of college now, right?
yeah,
You're going to be going into your second, or
I didn't go. There's a whole story with
Okay.
college. We'll get
we'll
to
get
that.
into it. But so over those 4 years, right? Or I guess 6, right? Because 7th, 8th, and then all of high school. How did you keep this from everybody? How did you, because that's hard, right? Being that young, that's a lot to have on your shoulders, right? That's a lot of weight to begin with. Now, were there things going on in your home? Like, how did your parents react? Like, how did everybody kind of react? Because the way you're making it sound, it was very secret, right? It was very kind of to yourself, which is understandable. It's hard to communicate these things to people, right? It's hard to talk about this stuff, especially when it's not talked about. And, kind of us growing up now at our age now, I think it's a lot more talked about, right? It's something that's super commonly talked about. But when we were growing up, it wasn't really talked about. And especially with our parents, they never talked about it because it wasn't something talked about when they were growing up. So how did you kind of overcome that part of it? Because that's an uncomfortable and hard conversation to have with anybody, let alone, your parents, your friends. So how did you go about that over those 6 years?
So I would say 7th grade through like 9th grade, I wouldn't do it anywhere visible. So it would be hidden by clothing or something like that. It would never be on my arm. And I would say like end of 9th through like a year ago, it was always on my arm, and I would just put a Band-Aid over it. And some of my friends would like look at me and be like, "What? Like, why do you always have a Band-Aid there? Like, what?" And I would just be like, "Oh, like, I don't know." But I eventually told like some of my close friends. They were very supportive, like very just very supportive. I'll just say that. They were there for me throughout the whole thing. And I found out some of them struggled with it too. And like a couple of years ago, and they told me like, yeah, like I was in a dark place and like I used to do that. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I thought I was the only one. Like, and it just like, I feel like telling people is a very good thing, because even if they've never done it in their lives, if they never even heard of it, they'll still, someone that you love, someone that you trust, they'll still be like, they won't encourage you to do it, but they'll be like, it's okay. Like, you were blah, blah, blah. Like, you were in that place. Like, it's understandable what you're doing right now.
And they don't look at you differently, which is so important.
Not at all. Yeah. But I had friends that really supported me. I'm still friends with some of them, but yeah, that's how like the whole friend thing happened. I kind of just, they noticed, I told them, and I would tell them like when I went on medication for the first time, like I told them I had a boyfriend at the time. He helped me a lot through it. Like I would tell him all about it. But my family was a lot different. I was like, my family is going to judge me like the most. Like I was just very scared. My mom is a very critical person with grades, and I know it's no comparison, but that's how I was thinking. I was irrationally thinking. I was like, well, she gets mad at me for that, so like she'll get mad at me for this. Like, your parents are in your life to tell you what to do when you're younger. That's like their job, to guide you and tell you what to do. So I was just like, okay, like they're just gonna give their opinion and gonna tell me what to do when like it's not that simple. So my parents, it was when my mom took me, I went to Cohen's Children's Hospital, and I just went in a room alone with this lady. I don't even think I was 18. Yeah, I was younger than 18, but they still were like, it should be confidential so that I would actually tell them what's going on. Um, and I remember just sitting in the room. She said that whole thing that I got into before. And I would just told her everything. Like, I just spilled everything and I was hysterically crying. I wasn't in like detail because I was still like shooken up about what she said, but I kind of just like nodded my head, agreed with her, was like, yeah, that happened. Then we went outside to the waiting room to get my mom, and I thought she was going to tell my mom. So I grabbed the doctor by the arm, pulled her aside, and I was like, do not tell my mom. Like, don't tell her anything about that. Like, you can tell her that I'm depressed, but don't go into it. And she was just like, I'm not going to tell your mom, but like, I highly encourage you to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it'll help her understand like how severe you're feeling. It's not just like you're in a funk. Like, it's how severe things are going. So I didn't tell my mom then. I was like, hell no. I was hysterically crying, and I kept asking my mom because they brought my mom in after me. And when she got out, I was like literally shaking. And I was like, what did they say to you? Like, what did they say to you? And she was kind of just like, oh, like they just, went over your chart and like how the symptoms that you're feeling, how you're always fatigued, like you're always tired, like you don't really want to do anything. And I was just like, okay, I'm safe. Like, she doesn't know. So that's kind of what happened there. Then that lady that I spoke to, she wound up being my psychiatrist. She prescribed me medication. I think it was Lexapro I was on first, which is more of an anxiety-based drug. So I was on Lexapro. Then I was on an enhancer of Lexapro, so it's called Wellbutrin, and that did not sit right with me. Now I'm on Zoloft. I'll get into the Lexapro and the Wellbutrin. That's like a whole story in itself. But I think like a few months on medication, I told my actual physical therapist that I like the severity of it, that I was self-harming and stuff like that. And she encouraged me, she helped me, she coached me on how to talk to my parents about it. And I eventually did. And I sat my mom down and I was like, this is the severity of it. Don't be upset with me. Don't be like ashamed in me. Don't think that I'm okay. Like, I've been dealing with it for years. You just didn't know. Like, I'm fine. My mom was super supportive. She was like, had no idea, because if you hide it that good, like no one's gonna know. So she was super supportive. She helped me kind of like help me without helping me. Like, she helped me in a way that I'm like, okay, if I self-harm, like now she'll know. Like, now she'll be looking for it. So like now it's like, I'll be like, oh, I'm embarrassed. Like, she'll know if it happened like within the week. So I kind of like stopped for a while. But now I'm like stopped for good. I realize that there is nothing good that comes out of it. It just honestly, it gets rid of the relief in the moment. I understand that when friends have like said that to me, or like I've listened to the pod and realized that that happens with people. It's long-term relief. Never. It doesn't happen. It just makes you identify as your depression. Like, it makes you like, when I like in that moment, in that time period, when I thought of myself, I just thought of depression, depressed, anxiety, self-harm, because that's all I was like good for. That's what I thought. So I think when you break the cycle and you probably will relapse. It happens. Don't be ashamed. But when you break the cycle, it's like a whole new perspective. You just realize that does nothing. Your thoughts don't control you. You don't have to act impulsively, and one thought comes to your brain like, oh, I had such a bad day today. That doesn't mean it has to be a million things. You have to keep digging, digging, digging. Okay, you had a bad day today. You don't need to worry about your parents' divorce years ago. You don't have to worry about your boyfriend cheating on you. Like, it just, and that's how people with depression think. It's how I think all the time. I still do, even though I'm like the best that I've been. I still think like that. And I realize I'm thinking like that, and I'm like, that's so irrational. Like, that's so just not, it just has nothing to do with what you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, totally. And, I kind of am in a similar boat. Our heads are so strong, whether it's something positive or negative, right? We can kind of convince ourselves of things that aren't really possible or aren't going to happen, right? In both ways, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes with anxiety and depression, it's these negative thoughts that can kind of get into your head. And what I tell people, or at least what I do, is immediately when I have one of these negative thoughts in my head, I almost just, I say to myself, no, 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 like, and over and over.
Same.
And it kind of drowns it out, right? You kind of can't hear it anymore. And it's something I've had to learn to do. And look, it's not perfect, right? It's not indefinite, but it kind of helps in the moment, right? It kind of helps when, you're having these bad thoughts, which it happens, right? It happens when you're having these negative thoughts, but if you can kind of mute them or drown them out, it really makes things a lot better. And you're like, wait, I need to be a little rational, and I need to realize that that's not going to happen, and that's not the case. While you were going through all of this, I think it's really amazing how you've kind of turned everything around. I think it's really amazing how, you started off this journey by yourself, and you started off, kind of trying to do everything by yourself. And, you realize that it's hard to do things by yourself, right? You kind of have to get other people involved, and, you wanted to get the help, right? You wanted to kind of better your situation, which is so important. And I think, for those of you guys listening out there who have gone through similar things or who are going through similar things, please try and reach out to somebody and kind of take those steps to get better. See therapists, go to the hospital, go to doctors, whatever it is, try and get better, because it is possible. You can get better. You have to put the work in. You clearly put the effort in, and, and look, it's a battle every day. It's not something that just disappears, but you're taking those steps to get to that greatest point you can, right? Like you said, this is the best you've ever been. This is your best point, which is so important, and people need to realize that. It's very hard to do things alone. I'm stubborn. I don't like, I like doing things by myself. I think, oh, yeah, I can do this, but a lot of times we can't. A lot of times we do have to reach out, and that doesn't mean we're weak or we're stupid or we're not capable of doing things by ourselves. It just means, hey, I'm getting help because that's giving me that extra push I need to achieve whatever I wanted to achieve. You have to look at it like that instead of looking at it like I'm weak, I can't do things, because it's seriously not the case. We have professionals out there for a reason. They're better at things than we are, right? That's just the nature of it, right? So if you're going through something and you're thinking, okay, I could do this all by myself, yeah, that might be the case, but why take 3 or 4 times the amount of time when you can do it in half the time just by getting help or just reaching out to somebody who really knows what they're doing? While you were being prescribed all this medication and stuff like that, did you notice it helped or did it hurt you? Because I've had people where it's helped, right? It's made some really big helpful changes in their life. But then I've also had people where it does the opposite, and it actually kind of enhances things and makes things a lot worse.
Yeah, so going into it, I knew that. My mom was very nervous about me starting medication because of her brother. He was on Prozac, and he obviously took his life. So he had a very negative effect on it. So she was very nervous. Like, she was like, if you have any thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself, wanting to die, anything like that, like, you need to come forward and tell me, because it could be like not how you're actually feeling. Like, it could be a little bit altered by the drug. And I didn't have that experience at all. When I was on Lexapro, I realized I needed a little more push. Like, I didn't know if it was like a placebo. So I was like, I need a little more push. Then I started going on enhancers of Lexapro. So I stayed with Lexapro, but then I added stuff to it, which I realized shortly after it was too much for my body. I feel like I can get into that. So I was on Lexapro until I went away to school. So last August 20th, I went to Sacred Heart University. It was move-in day. I was like super excited. I just got over like a bad breakup. I was like, oh, I need to get away from Long Island, just everything. So I was moving in, and I think it was my last drawer of stuff I was putting together, and I started just shaking uncontrollably, and I wound up having a seizure. And I had no idea, obviously. I was completely incoherent. Like, I had no idea. But apparently it was really bad. I had a grand mal seizure, which is very severe. I was in a seizure for like, I think it was 5.5 minutes, which is insane. Thinking about it now.
That's crazy.
It's insane. I was like foaming out the mouth. My lips were blue. Like, it was just insane. It was a lot on move-in day. And I remember waking up in the ambulance, and I was just like so out of it. I was just like, oh my God, like, where am I? And they were like, you're in an ambulance, like, we're on the way to the hospital. And I was like, oh my God, like, who's hurt? Like, I had no idea like what was happening. And they were just like, you. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? I've never had a seizure in my entire life. It was my first and hopefully only one. They think the root of it is the medication that I was taking. So the enhancer to Lexapro, Wellbutrin. So I immediately stopped that. But I still don't know to this day. They said it could be stress. It could be that medication. But yeah, I don't know. And it was very traumatic for my parents. I had like amnesia for like days. Like, I didn't remember anything for like days. So that was scary. But I haven't been able to drive because of it. That's why my dad drove me here. But yeah, you have to be like a year seizure free. You probably know this from Ryan, but I don't have epilepsy, but you still have to be like a year seizure free since I'm not on epileptic medication. But it's a lot. Like, it was that like threw my whole college experience off. And then from there, I just didn't go to class for like 2 weeks, literally rotting in my bed. Like, I would barely eat. And I'm not someone who struggles with eating at all. I just would have no appetite whatsoever. I wouldn't eat, wouldn't shower, wouldn't brush my teeth, would just lay in bed, wouldn't study, wouldn't do any of my work, didn't go to class for 2 weeks, and came home every weekend on the ferry to Port Washington. And I don't know. It was just a lot. It was a lot. Did I just say Port? Yeah. It was a lot, but yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, so this was all in the matter of, you're going to college, right? You're going away to college. So first off, that's a little stressful, right? You gotta, it's exciting, but it's stressful, right? You're leaving all your friends, your family, you're going on to experience whatever you're going to experience. Then this traumatic experience
Honestly,
happens.
it's funny now to like look back at it. I'm just like, on move-in day, like,
yeah.
what?
And now, do you think this also kind of triggered more depression. Were you still taking medication or no? Like you just completely stopped? Or was it, because I know you said you stopped the enhancer, but did you then just go to the regular or?
Yeah, so I took Lexapro and Wellbutrin, so I just stayed on the Lexapro. I completely stopped the Wellbutrin because if there was any possibility that it could give me a seizure again, I was like, absolutely not. That's terrifying and no one would do that. But yeah, it definitely did enhance my depression, like depressive episodes, anxiety, because I was like, oh my God, like, should I even go out? Like, what if I have a seizure, like, at a house party? Like, no one's helping me. Like, I was just so scared. I didn't drink or anything. I'm underage, but I didn't drink or anything. Because I was, like, so scared of, like, it triggering a seizure. They told me that could trigger a seizure. They were, like, vaping, smoking. Like, they were just, like, anything could cause it. And I was just so scared of, like, being near any of that.
So were you able to make friends, right? Because this is the first week of college. Like your first 2 weeks, this is where people are making their friends, kind of, seeing who's around, everything like that. You seem to have not been able to do that. Is that the case?
Well, I moved in early, a week early than everyone, because I was doing like a pre-fall program for nursing. So I made like a lot of friends, honestly. I made a good amount. My roommate was a sweetheart. But it was just a lot. Like everyone kind of knew because my whole pre-fall program, like I just wasn't there. Like, and they were just like, what? Like, where is she? And I didn't really care if people knew. It was just like a freak thing. But it was definitely really scary and took a toll on not only me, but like my family who was watching that. But yeah.
So then did you also wind up finishing out the semester fine? Like how did that all go? You started off where you're missing the first 2 weeks, right? That must have been a lot on your plate. Very stressful, right? 2 weeks, you're learning. It's a whole new system, right? You're just coming from high school. It's very, very new. Now you missed the first 2 weeks. How did that first semester go?
So I didn't finish out the first semester. I left. I took a medical leave at the end of September. So I was there for about a month and 2 weeks ish. And yeah, I just kind of blamed it on my seizure, but I was just not mentally well, like at all. I was not fit to go away. I was like overhyping it kind of, and I was so excited to like, not to party or anything. I was just so excited for like a new scenery, just a new beginning. Like I was just thought I was so ready for it, and I wasn't, and that's why I left. And I just didn't go anywhere. I didn't go home or anything, school wise. So I just came home, and then I wind up working full time, going to therapy in Queens. So yeah.
So what's that whole experience been like? Because, that must be tough, right? All your friends are in school right now, so how does that kind of make you feel? And I think, honestly, it's pretty brave of you and awesome of you to be able to realize, like, hey, I'm not in the right space right now. Let me get myself right first, and let me get into a good position before I go and try and do something that's not really going to help me. I think it's pretty awesome that you're going to therapy and you're doing something that's bettering you. I think that's so important, and I don't think a lot of people would be brave enough to be able to do that. I think a lot of people would kind of sit there and just suffer in silence, and instead you're kind of taking the reins and you're saying, no, I'm not going to let this control me. I'm going to do something about it. So I think that's very admirable about you. So
Thank you.
You should seriously be proud about that. So how does that all make you feel, though? Because there's definitely people out there who would be like, oh, why are you doing that? You're crazy. So how does that, have you even experienced that? Are there people out there saying that stuff? What is your whole take on this?
Yeah, so me personally, I think it was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, leaving school. I've heard through the grapevine, like people have been saying stuff like, why would she leave such a beautiful school? Why would she leave such an expensive school? But like, I just know in my head that's not people that
Care about
I
you.
value or
Yeah.
care about me whatsoever. So, or know really anything. So I just kind of don't really care. But it was the best decision of my entire life. When I came home, I was still not mentally well. It's not like I came home and it fixed everything. I started doing an outpatient program. I was offered to live there. I thought it just wasn't, I was just like, no, I need to be home.
Can you get into that? So, explain what an outpatient program is, kind of explain the entire thing.
Yeah. So inpatient is like a psychiatric unit, where you basically just live there and they would administer medication like you would at home, and just make sure you're not a danger to yourself or others. I wasn't really a danger to myself. I was never a danger to others, but I wasn't a danger to myself anymore. So I was like, I don't think I need that. I don't want to take up a spot for someone else who needs it. I didn't think I needed that. I think a couple years ago, I definitely needed that. But I just decided to do outpatient. I love my therapist. She has literally changed my life completely. And I have a psychiatrist as well who prescribes me medication. I'm on Zoloft now. I like Zoloft more than Lexapro personally. It's just a preference. But yeah, I was outpatient. So like all day I would sleep all day. I didn't have a job. I think I had one job. I work 2 jobs now, but I had like one job at the time that I would work like 3 hours like 3 times a week. Like it was nothing. And my parents would be like, you're just not doing anything. And I would think they're criticizing me, but really they were just trying to like make me realize that like I wasn't leaving my bed at all. So I stayed in my bed all day. Didn't shower, didn't brush my teeth, like the typical Belle when she's in like a depressive episode. But I wasn't executive functioning at all. I wasn't functioning as a human being. I wasn't cleaning myself. Like it was just not, I was not okay. And my therapist actually, it took me months to just call and apply for a second job. It took me months to just call them and ask if they're hiring. And eventually I did. My therapist pushed me to. And it was the best decision of my life. Again, I work full time. Obviously, when I committed to Hofstra, so I'm staying locally. And I feel like I'm ready to go back. Obviously, I'm not going to be working full time. I'm still going to probably keep the 2 jobs. But I literally work usually it's like 5 or 6 days a week. I work from 9 a.m. to like 4 at one job. And then I have to my grandma picks me up because I can't drive. And I stop home really quick, change my shirt, and rush to my other job that I have to be at by like 4:30. And I'm there till like around 9.
Wow.
So I'm like working so much, but I have no complaints. I love it. It's the real world. It's people work. But I love making my own money and like just having to do something every day that it's like, it's not like, oh, like I don't want to shower today. Like it's something you have to be at or you will get fired. Like you have to be there. It's responsibility. And it pushes me to take care of myself because I'm like, I'm going to be around so many people. I have 2 serving jobs. I'm going to be serving people food. Like, so I try to keep myself mentally well and physically well. And I've been doing great with that recently. I've been doing the best at that. I think it's because of the jobs.
Good. And that's really important too. Giving yourself something that you have to do, like you said. It's very easy when we set these things in our head like, oh, I want to go to the gym tomorrow or I want to go on a walk tomorrow. It's very easy to kind of blow that off, right? We're not really held to anything. There's no repercussions if we don't, right? It's just kind of something like, oh, whatever, I'll go next week. Where you have a job, like you said, you can't not show up. And, well, I guess you technically can, but you'll get fired. So you don't want that to happen. And I think that's really important. And that's another thing that I've noticed too, even with my anxiety. I need structure. So when things aren't structured, it's very hard because, it's just things can go awry. You can, like you said, you can feel like not going, you can do whatever. But when there's this structure there that you have to go, you have to show up, it makes it a lot easier. And it's kind of mentally like, no, I can't miss that. I really have to be there. I have to get up. I have to show up. And, especially if you like the job, it's really important to kind of, you want to show up, you want to look clean, you want to look, presentable, and it's important. And that's those things that are really, really good for, what you're going through, what you went through. And it's like, look, I'm completely functioning, right? I'm able to have 2 jobs. I'm able to do really whatever I want. And that's really important for people to realize, especially, like I said before, if you guys are going through this stuff at home and you're having a hard time getting out of bed, and look, we've all been there. I've been there. You've been there. It's hard, right? It sucks. You don't want to do anything. You just want to sit there and, like you said, rot all day, and it's very easy to do. It's especially once you're in that hole, it's hard to get out. But, let this be that message. Get up, push yourself and go and try and do something that just do something, even if it's just brushing your teeth, doing your hair. Those little things turn into big things. Would you say the same thing? It's those little things.
100%. Literally, if you just get up and even wet your toothbrush and then just put it back down and go back and fall asleep for hours. That's literally like the first step that I wish I did years ago. Like, I wish I started that so soon. And it's just, I look at it as like, why be rotting all day? Why be so upset all day when, like, you could easily, I say that lightly, but like, if you really think about it, you could easily be pushing towards feeling happier or like feeling better or feeling more well and just doing something. There's been months that went by where I legit would not get out of bed. I would wake up when my parents were going to bed for work in the morning. Wouldn't eat, and like it takes a toll on you, and it takes a toll on like your family. If you live with your family, it takes a toll on them as well, because they're just like oh my God, like, where did we go wrong? But it has nothing to do with them. In my case, it had nothing to do with my parents. But I would say just keep going. Like, that's my biggest takeaway from like everything I've been through in my life. Like, just keep going. Like, just keep going. Like, the only way out of all like the sadness and everything is through. Like, you just have to keep pushing through, keep waking up, keep doing something, and it'll get so much better. And I didn't know that until a month ago. Like, I didn't know that until recently at all.
Exactly. And, I've talked to this one guy before, and he has depression, and he always said, he was like, I just wake up and I'm not happy, and he's like, I had to kind of change the way I think, and I had to change that feeling, right? I have to look at those positive things. And he was like, I started to realize, yes, he had clinical depression, right? So he was diagnosed with depression, but he was like, I kind of fed into it also. I just kind of let it consume me. And instead of looking at anything positively, everything was so negative. And all he would do is kind of just harp on those negative things. And it really brought him down. And he said once he realized, like, to stop kind of giving it more energy and stop feeding into it, he was like, I'm still depressed. He's like, it's not like it just went away. He's like, but it's 1,000 times better. I'm not having those scary thoughts that I was constantly having. He's like, I had to change the way I thought. And look, like I said, he's clinically depressed. It's something that's in his chemical makeup, and he takes medication, so it's better. But, you have to change the way you think. Our brains, and I'll say this time and time again, our brains are so powerful and we don't even realize it. It can make or break your entire life. You just have to control it. You have to use it to your benefit. Our brains can do many, many things that we're not even aware of, whether it's subconscious. You have to really use that power for good. What would you tell little Belle? What would you go back and tell yourself 10 years ago, 15 years ago? What would you say to little Belle?
Wow. I would just say basically what you said. Like, I would just say it's never going to go away. It's just with you forever, but it doesn't have to control you forever. And I let it control me for years. And I think so many people, that's why there's a whole mental health awareness. Like, it's because your thoughts literally control you. And one little thing could like just ruin your whole week. And it's like a real thing. And I would just tell her to like, it's not, I don't know, like, it doesn't define you, I would say, as one of the things I would tell her, because whenever I was happy, I would literally be like, why am I happy right now? Like, that's not right. And I would literally flip the switch. Like, I would actually think in my brain thoughts that make me so anxious that I'm like, feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And I would do that to myself. And I did that to myself up till last year, up till when I got home from school and started therapy, like a real cognitive, like behavioral therapy.
Wow. So that's important for everybody out there. It doesn't define you, and you guys should all really take that to heart. It does not define you, and you can control it. I say this about many things. You don't have to let these things control you. You can control them. And finally, what would you change anything that has happened? Would you go back and change anything? You could say yes, you would change everything. Would you change a few things? Would you change nothing?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Would I change anything? No, I wouldn't. I think I would say most of the population goes through some kind of hardship mentally. And I think that me being here, talking about it and talking about it to my friends and my family and my younger sibling, like, I think it will make a difference. Like, I think it will just affect one person's day. Like, just one person will be like, wait, like, you feel that way as well? Because in middle school, I didn't think anyone felt like that. I was just a little kid. Like, I didn't look around and be like, oh my God, like, they're sad right now. Like, no, like, I didn't think that at all. So the stuff I've been through, everyone has their shit. And like, the stuff that I've been through, this is so cliche, but like, it made me who I am today. It literally did. It made me control my thoughts, because my therapist actually recently said to me, she looked at me and she was like, do you know, like, anxiety could be good, right? And I was like, no. I was like, anytime I'm anxious, I want to like literally like run around in circles. And she was like, no, it's letting you know. She's like, if you're walking in a dark alleyway at night and you're feeling very anxious and you're like, oh my God, like, there's something off here, and you run, she's like, that could have saved your life. And like, that's why your anxiety is there, to warn your body that something's not right. And I never knew that, ever. I never thought about it like that, never had a positive light of it at all. And I don't know. I realized that anxiety can be good. Like, if you're so sad about something and then you're like shaking, or I used to like bite the inside of my lip. Like, when you're doing that stuff, it just lets you know that like you don't feel comfortable. Like, I lost my grandpa like 2 years ago, and he was like the closest person to me. I love him to death. And it took a huge toll on me. It was probably the worst moments in my entire life. And on the 2-year anniversary, I went back. He lived upstate with his girlfriend. So I went to that house that he was in hospice care, and I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, like just looking in the room that like his hospice bed was, and like he wasn't eating, and like it was just a terrible connotation, and it just gave me so much anxiety. I literally crawled up in a ball, hid in the bathroom, and just cried. And I just like realized like recently, maybe like a couple weeks ago, I realized I was just like, for losing a loved one, I'm saying, like, he loved you so much. Stuff happens. It's his timing. It has nothing to do with you. It's out of your control. It happened. It has nothing, not that it has nothing to do with you, but it's out of your control completely. Why have anxiety over it? If it was going to happen regardless if you even existed or not, why have anxiety about it? Obviously, you're going to be sad about it. It's a horrible thing, losing a loved one. But the anxiety portion, me just like freaking out, instead of freaking out, I kind of just like thought to myself, I was like, but like, what about the times before that in that house that like we played card games, or like we played with the dog, like, and I just have a completely different mindset now. Like, I would not change a single thing. I have a completely different mindset. I go for therapy. I go in Queens, and like border of Queens, New Hyde Park, Zucker Hillside Hospital. My therapist is phenomenal. Like, I absolutely love her. She changed my whole perspective on everything, because I would just push it off. I'd be like, okay, I'm sad. No, 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 no. And I would literally say that up until a couple weeks ago. And she was like, don't say no, no, no. She was like, literally just feel it. Like, my biggest anxiety stressor was past relationships, like romantic relationships. And anytime I would think about that person, I would get so much anxiety. I'd be like, oh my God, like, what if I was the problem? Like, what if like no one will love me? Like, you just think a million things because of one thing not working out. And it was a high school relationship. They usually don't work out, but I don't know. Like, I just completely see it in a different light. Like, she was like, just feel it. And actually, like 2 weeks ago, she was like, for homework, she was like, just feel it. Like, when you think about him, literally just feel it. Just feel it. Just be upset. Be like, why did he do that to me? Mm-hmm. And I did. And after like a few seconds of being like, oh my God, like, why did he do that to me? Like, being so upset and being just like anxiety filled, like biting my nails, I was just like, but like, that happens to everyone. Like, everyone goes through a breakup or a heartbreak or, you know, rejection. Like, everyone goes through that. And I was like, now it leaves room for like working on yourself. And I never understood that until a week ago. I never understood that what working on yourself actually meant. I was just like, okay, I'll go get my nails done and tan. But no, it's really like talking about your feelings, feeling your feelings, because I never felt my feelings until recently. And it's good to feel them, because then you realize like it doesn't control you. Like, okay, I'm sad. Oh no, he broke up with me. It really doesn't define you at all. Like, you'll sit there and after like 30 seconds, you're just like, what? Like, why am I upset right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could tell, you know, and I don't know you too well, but I can tell just how you're talking. Like, you do have a completely different mindset. You know, everything has completely changed, and it didn't just change out of nowhere. It's because you put the work in. You know, it's because of you, and you should be aware of that. You know, it's not because of outside factors. It's because of you. You changed it. You changed your environment. You changed your mindset. And I think that's really important. Is there anything else you would like to add or touch on?
I just want to say, not about me, but like, I just want to say, like, anyone out there who is either harming themselves or just thinking about thoughts that you don't even want to say out loud, there's always happiness out there, and you will find it. Even if it's not like you're happy every day, like you're going to be sad. Life comes with sadness. And at first I was just like, I was sad on Monday. And my therapist was like, well, why? And I was like, a bad grade on a test. And she's like, that's normal. Like, it's normal to be sad. And it is normal to be sad, and it's normal to be anxious, and it's normal to be happy. It's the balance. Like, if you realize that you're anxious or more upset than normal, just talk to one person. It will literally change your life. And it changed my life completely. I still struggle. Every single day is a battle, like with getting to work on time and just everything. It's just a battle, like just every little thing you can imagine. But once you break that, like, I don't know, like that negative barrier, like once you break that and you realize like my thoughts mean nothing, like they literally mean nothing. They're just a thought in your head. You have control over your whole body. Once you realize that, your whole life changes. Whole life.
Totally. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. You have an amazing story, and everybody can clearly see that. And I'm really excited for you to be able to put this out to people, because it's really important, right? There's things that everybody struggles with, and it's not known. These things can be, on the outside, you would never think it, right? And it's so important to be able to have these conversations. So thank you for opening up. Thank you for getting vulnerable. It's really important to talk about this stuff. So thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say? No, you're good?
Just
right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening. And don't forget to check out Dark Angel Company on Instagram at Dark Angel Co. and online at darkangelco.com. If you're interested in supporting and spreading awareness towards bringing light to a dark topic together, then tune in next time.